Just while we're waiting for folks, I'm going to turn my camera off for just a minute and try to fix my lighting so I'm not totally backlit. Hi, Christine. We're going to get started in just a few more minutes. We're going to give everybody a few more minutes to join in so we can try to have a quorum for tonight.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, hopefully we'll have some more folks join us here soon. If we only have three members, I don't know that we could actually have we don't really have a quorum, so I don't know that we would be able to really conduct any business. But we'll give it a few more minutes because, again, I know it's a new platform and maybe folks are having a hard time getting in. So it sounds like we have a couple of people that are having a hard time getting in, and Jessica's working with them to try to get them access. So thanks for being patient, y'all. Just out of curiosity, for the 4 that are here, we're able to get in. Did it ask you to enter in a password, or did it just let you follow the link that was provided to you?
I did have to enter a password, but it was in the body of the email, so it was
Okay.
pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to enter a password as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I did too.
We're going to give them just a few more minutes, and hopefully we'll be able to get them in. We need a few more than, looks like we've only heard from Susan and Dana saying they were having problems getting in, and that would bring us up to, excuse me, 6 total people. We'd need one more to be able to adopt the bylaws as they're drafted, just for a 2/3 vote to get us fully there. But we would be able to, once they're in, be able to just move forward with the meeting. We just wouldn't be able to adopt the bylaws unless a 3rd person is able to join us. There we go. Hi, Dana. Oh, we go. So it looks like, Dana, we're just waiting for one more person to get in. It looks like Susan was going to try to join. We were hoping for a 7th. One of the first things on the agenda was to vote on the bylaws, but unfortunately we do need a 2/3 majority to pass those, and we don't have 2/3 present tonight so far. So we would need Susan and one other to join just to have 2/3, and that's assuming it would be a unanimous approval for us to adopt them. So if that does not happen, we would have to push, but we do have a quorum to be able to just conduct other business in the meeting. So we'll give it about 2 or 3 more minutes here. And actually what we might do now that we're here, and I apologize, I'm messing around with my layout a little bit and realize that just so that I can see everything and try to see everybody, and getting used to this new format. But if y'all are, if I'd say let's go ahead and move forward with the agenda as it is, and we'll just skip over the piece with the bylaws and then circle back to those if we can get a couple more people to join us late if they're having a hard time. But just for the sake of time, we'll go ahead and talk through some other pieces. So the agenda overall, you all hopefully had a chance to look at it. We were going to talk about the bylaws, review, do a final review, and then take a vote on their adoption. And then if adopted, we were going to discuss solicit nominations for the chair position that's laid out in the bylaws. But if we need to, we can either set up a separate meeting to do that or push that to the next meeting. Other CAC business, there are a couple of changes to county administrative rules I wanted to make y'all aware of. Hopefully won't have huge impacts on us as a group for the CAC, but also talk about new member recruitment. We do have a couple of members that are going to be dropping off, and we had a couple of vacancies anyway. And so we are coming up to that point in time where we're going to need to recruit some new members, and we'll talk about that. And then from there, I'll give a couple of updates around shelter operations, specifically around where we are with adoptions, just because I know it's a bit of a point of interest for community members, as well as our fiscal year 2023 budget. And aside from that, we can also discuss if y'all have any questions or anything else. Any questions on the agenda, and then we can just kind of skip over the bylaws piece and move into the other pieces. Oh, Dana, I can't hear you at all. It looks like you're muted.
There
There you go.
I can't find the agenda in my
I
emails. I'm
here,
sorry if I've just put it somewhere, but
I couldn't find it either. I thought I was just
I
being slacker.
apologize. Let me
Same here, yeah.
see if I can forward a copy of that to you now. And actually, what might be better just for the short term is let me see if we can, if it'll allow us to share a screen.
Fantastic.
That might be the easiest way to do this. See what that does. That I cannot see that. I don't know if that shows up for y'all. Is that, can you see the agenda? Okay, and
I
it's
can see it,
readable?
yeah.
And
Okay. So it looks like I'm just not going to be able to see it. So I'm going to be in a different tab so that I can see the agenda. I'll be going back and forth. So if you do have a question, please unmute. I'll do my best to jog back and forth between the different tabs, just because I can't, I can only see one or the other. Okay, so for the first piece, the county does have, just so you all know, did adopt a new administrative rule regarding advisory group standards. So this was approved and adopted by Chair Kafori on November 29th of last year, so just a month ago or so. And essentially what it does is it establishes standards for county advisory groups, outlining requirements for them for things like term limits, member expectations and onboarding, and recruitments for vacancies. A lot of these are already incorporated into our bylaws. And those that are not incorporated in our bylaws are going to be incorporated into what we've been calling a little bit more casually our practices document that Dana and Tracy and Susan have been working on. And we'll be discussing that at the next CAC meeting to adopt those pieces. But a big piece of it was just to make sure that all advisory groups within the county, whether they're a committee or regardless of how they're established, that they have specific policies and procedures. One is that they all have written bylaws and policies to include expectations for member conduct, attendance and participation, term limits to ensure regular rotation of group membership, and a process for removing members due to violation of county policies or failure to meet member expectations. And like I said, those are all already kind of built into the bylaws that we've been working on for several months now. We were just a little bit ahead of the curve as far as that goes. But also a requirement for an onboarding plan for new members that includes training on relevant personnel policies, county values, and public official code of ethics and responsibilities. Those are all existing for all those policies. They exist for the county already. And essentially what we would be doing is adopting just basic practices around how do we make sure that they're accessible to members, how do we track that they're reviewed, and that they're reviewed at a minimum at the beginning of each term of that member. So those we'll be passing along more information on those and sharing those here in the next month with y'all to make sure you all have access to them. And like I said, we'll be pulling them all into our overall practices and incorporating them into some more formal documentation just so that we have it. But overall, I think it's a good thing. I mean, it just makes sure that we're all aligned with county values. And I don't see any reason why there would be an issue with that for anyone. Just with the way that we conduct our meetings. It also has requirements of departments to do things like provide appropriate staffing to fulfill the advisory group's duties and provide public information on the group's purpose, meeting schedule, and staff contact information on the county's website, as well as recruit community members of diverse identities, experiences, and backgrounds to serve, and to post any vacancies publicly and be sent to the Office of Community Involvement with an application available to the public to fill a vacancy, which again, that's something that we've already done. So that's essentially the short version. That is the administrative rule that was adopted. The county did provide some basic guidelines and like tips on how to incorporate these things. Like I said, we've already for the most part incorporated them aside from that practices document, which we're still working on finalizing. Any questions on that? I just thought it'd be good to review with everybody so you're all aware of the need for it, but we are ahead of the curve as far as getting all those things done because we've already drafted our bylaws and we're just waiting to adopt them. I'm going to pause there just in case anybody has any questions. Just, again, because I know it's a new platform, so finding that mute button might be a little bit tricky.
Thanks for Wade shared it with me because I was working on the practices document. It's a really short piece and yeah, all sounds great to me.
Great. Thank you, Dana. Thanks, Tracy. Okay. The other piece that is a little bit new, it's not going to impact anybody in the group immediately, but when we get to a point, and I know we've discussed it briefly before in previous meetings, of I think our desire to see like how we could meet together. The county, for if you're not aware, did adopt a policy that all staff and volunteers have to be either vaccinated or provide or have an exception that would be based on either religious or medical grounds to be accepted from the vaccination requirement. But there is a requirement, and what that means is, since all CAC members, aside from myself and Jessica, because we're staff, you're considered volunteers, and so in order for us to meet in person when that time comes, there will be a requirement that anybody that meets in person either be vaccinated or have an approved exception through the county. Obviously, that's not today that it has to be done, but I will be also sending out some communications around that, just so you all are aware with an actual process. We have a process to vet those through the county to make sure that we're maintaining people's confidential medical information confidential and not sharing those types of things. We won't be sharing whether somebody qualified to attend via either an exception or a vaccination. They're both the same and equally valid. But that is a piece that we're going to have to go through, and we're going to work with our volunteer coordinator to capture that information. But I'll be sending out more information to the whole group on that. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. It will likely be still several months. I mean, I'm sure you all are seeing the news, and the Omicron variant of COVID-19 is really wreaking havoc. I know that like a lot of businesses are closing again. Schools are closing. One of my kids' school is closed currently. Their entire district is closed now because of staffing shortages that are directly related to COVID outbreaks. Again, unfortunately, it just seems the pandemic just seems to keep continuing. Hopefully we'll come out the other side of it, and would love to be able to see you all in person again. But there will probably also always be some component of virtual, just to accommodate different schedules or like people's ability to get out and things like that, and work through what a hybrid meeting would look like. So those that are able to attend in person can, but those that can't, make sure that there's still accessibility for them to be able to attend and participate in these meetings. It's really important to have. But yeah, and then the last piece, like I mentioned before, and it ties into with the new administrative rule as well. We do have a need to do a new recruitment. Obviously, like even tonight, we have a shortage of members, so we can't conduct all of the business that we were hoping to conduct. And I think we have a couple of members as well that had completed their first term and have opted to not return. And believe that's Susan Getty and Nancy Fedelum, unfortunately, have opted not to re-up for a second term. So we need to replace those two positions, as well as a couple of others that were just vacant. I think we had with them about 10 members. And we have between 9 and 12 is where our target is, where we would like to be. So we are going to be need to do another recruitment. What I would likely do is reach out, and we already have a pretty good process in place to reach out and advertise for those. And I'll be working with Jessica and our Jay Levitri, our program communications coordinator, to sort of dust that off, that process off, and the language within the posting and how we make it available and how we kind of do outreach around recruiting new members, and start doing that and get that messaging out there. But what we might do, just since we don't have a whole lot of members here tonight, is, and it sounds like we would want to probably figure out a way to get our bylaws adopted so that we can get that taken off, is reach out and do a quick poll online to try to get feedback on the recruitment process, how we can get that started, so we don't have to wait until the next CAC meeting to get that underway. With the bylaws, the way that they're written right now, assuming that they were to get adopted, the terms would shift a little bit and go from January start date to a July 1 start date. So there's a little bit of a 6-month window, but basically it would be a July 1 start date where folks would join us. And that gives us plenty of time, just shy of 6 months as of today, to be able to put out and complete a recruitment for new members in order to have them start at the beginning of that first summer meeting. What we would do is, but we'll work through what those intricacies are, get that out there, and we'll do some work likely outside of this meeting and reach out to some folks, other members that aren't here tonight, via email, and try to either see if we need to create an ad hoc meeting to discuss that a little bit more in depth, to go over a plan, or if we can get some agreement via email. Any questions or thoughts on that, on taking that approach, or concerns with that?
That sounds great to me. And in the practices, we have some things around member recruitment, but we haven't actually seen the document of the actual process. So so that would be great to have some congruency. And should we be thinking about folks from various communities that might be?
Yeah, I think that would be amazing. Like I said, we really want to have a diverse group that's representative of folks that we don't already have here. I think we have some nice diversity on the team already, but there can always be improvements in that area. And folks that have, different, everybody has a different perspective and experience in the world that we live in, and just bringing that in. So yeah, definitely, if there are some, we would encourage anybody to reach out to anybody that you think would be a good fit. But we also will reach out to different community groups to promote the opportunity and make them aware as well, in addition to that. But the more good messaging we can get out, I think the better. And Tracy, how many members do we have now? Today we have 10 members, but with Nancy and Susan leaving, that would bring us down to 8 members total. And for the way the bylaws are written, hopefully you all have all had a chance to review them. What we did is kind of separate them, the different seats, into different terms. So there are 3 different seat groups, I guess, for lack of a better word, of 4 people each. And so what we would be looking at would be seats 1 through 4 would end on June 30th, 2023. Seats 5 through 8 would end on June 30th, 2024, and 9 through 12 would end on June 30th, 2025. And what we would need to do is, when we have get the whole group together, when we're able to do that, what we would want to do is discuss and talk through if people have a preference to be on one group or another. Our thought is, because right now Jonathan and Paige would be at the beginning of their second term, because they had started in January, I believe, and would run through the end of December, is when that would have run. But what we would do is kind of play with that a little bit and say, okay, well, we're going to extend that 6 months just so that we can make that difference up. And then we would go to the remaining folks of y'all, with Megan, Tracy, Dana, Christine, Sally, and Nicole, and basically kind of say, let's talk through like who would want to be part of which group, and whether that would extend their current term or potentially shorten their current term, and what the impacts of that could be, so that we can because I don't want anybody to have to be forced to leave prematurely or feel like they're obligated to stay when they don't have the bandwidth. So happy to have that conversation around it. But what that would also mean long term is that we would essentially do a recruitment every year, and it would just become part of our standard practices. We would recruit up to 4 members each year, recognizing that some of those recruitments, depending on the year, it could be just a reappointment of the current seats if they were still in if they had just finished their first term. That if they were still interested in wanting to participate, that they would be available for a potential second term. So that could fill it in some years, but other years, even if there was just one vacancy, we could still definitely recruit for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a great question. Thank you. Yeah, Jonathan, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think we should probably try to take care of the bylaws stuff before the next meeting. So probably an ad hoc meeting would be good so that you guys can have that finalized.
Yeah, I would agree. And yeah, what we might need to do if for some reason we can't figure out, we'll work with I don't know if y'all are familiar with, they're called Doodle polls. But it's basically kind of like a, hey, what would work for each of you? And we can throw those out. And if for some reason we can't get everybody on board with that, I'm sure we could figure out a way to take votes online via email. We'd prefer to have it in a meeting so that we could have some discussion around it. But if we can't, then worst case scenario, we would do that, I think. But yeah, I'm in agreement with you, Jonathan. Like, I think ideally we'd like to have that resolved before the next meeting so that it's ready to go. Okay. So aside from that, it might be a little bit of a short meeting tonight, but I just wanted to give you all a couple of updates for adoptions. We are continuing to move towards some in-person adoptions. Currently today, we're still only doing a virtual process. It's been beneficial in a lot of ways, and a lot of animals are still getting adopted out into new homes, which is great. But we also know that there is, a real desire for the public to want to be able to see those animals and kind of like not have to just go based off of a photo on a website and the short little bio that we write. And so we are still moving towards that right now. I kind of mentioned earlier, there's a lot of places that are struggling with staffing. We are also short staffed right now, and that's really been the big thing that's been preventing us from being able to move towards that. We have about 4 different vacancies in our Animal Tech 2 roles, which do primarily adoption counseling as one of their duties, which has really limited us. So we're focusing a lot of their work on day-to-day intake and behavior management of animals and intaking animals and focusing more there, and then doing the adoptions where we can, which having a virtual process is definitely beneficial for. But we're actively doing interviews, and then here this week and next week for those roles. We have a good pool of applicants that we feel pretty confident with, and hopefully those will be filled. And our goal is to have some version of in-person adoptions in place by the end of February is our goal. Granted, that might shift a week or two depending on different circumstances, but what we would likely do is move towards some sort of an appointment-based system where we wouldn't necessarily open up and just for free roaming browsing through adoption kennels for the public in general. Just because we are still in a pandemic and we don't want to bring a lot of crowds in together. But in order to get that access, what we would do is provide appointments to come in. And so your time would be like, say, and again, these are just some examples of potentially where it could land, like a 1-hour appointment, and in advance and that's scheduled. You come in and meet the animals then and have plenty of time to do any kind of adoption counseling session to be able to bring an animal home with you so that you can meet. Just so the first time you're meeting that pet isn't when you're picking it up. We know that that's a challenge and it's a struggle. Thankfully, a lot of people have been really flexible with that, and we've been able to put a lot of animals into really good loving homes as a result. But we want to take that extra level of accessibility and help people out with that and make it a little bit easier. And the reality is it'll help us to get animals out a little bit quicker doing it that way, because an online only system, while it has some benefits as far as like equitable access for folks that may not have like the same types of transportation access as other people do, it also delays animals, because a lot of times it'll take us several days to coordinate all of the things that we need to via an online thing, where we could otherwise just have those taken care of right then and there. And we're also looking at how can we, make it so that we can work with folks that might have transport issues and really take advantage of, not totally throw out everything that we've learned and been able to accomplish through virtual adoptions, but to make it that nice hybrid model so that people can still access. And we're looking forward to that. In the meantime, we have been, like I said, adopting quite a few animals out. Or moving animals out through other means, whether it's that majority of that being transferring out to other people, to other agencies that have better capacity to focus on adoptions, so that they can do that. So animals are still definitely moving through. We have a relatively low population in the shelter right now, which is good for all of us. And it's really what our goal is keep animals out of the shelter and keep them in their homes. So excited for that. And then the other piece, the last piece I just wanted to give you all an update on, is we are in the very beginning of budget season for fiscal year 2023. So that runs from July 1 of this year of 2022 through the end of June of 2023. Really good news on one front. This is the first time in Chair Kafori's tenure that she has not had to ask for a reduction in funding or a restriction. So that's a really exciting piece for the last, for those of you who haven't been around as much, we've been going through reductions, and like every year it's like, looking at how we can save money where it doesn't cost people a job. And we've been really creative in being able to do that. Last year, for example, we opted to leverage some of our donation funds to keep 2 CVT positions in our animal health work unit going in order to accommodate a restriction in funds that we had to figure out. This year, we're not facing that. We also, unfortunately, don't have funds to add a lot of people, but I am happy to say that we're adding those 2 CVT positions back through being funded through the general fund and not through our donation funds any longer. That's honestly, though, going to be our big request. The other piece that we're going to be working on, we're not going to be submitting it as an offer for ourselves for animal services, but we're working with our parent Department of Community Services, as well as the other divisions within our department, to request additional funding for training and support for staff. And what we would use that for is specifically for us is, since we do have some vacancies throughout all of our work units, is do some dedicated team building with support through the department to really make sure that we build strong, resilient teams that have good communication, strong communication, and are working well with each other and internally as well. And the other big thing is to do some shelter-wide or agency-wide, some animal welfare specific compassion fatigue training. I'm sure you all know that working in animal welfare, it can be taxing emotionally and mentally, as well, not even counting the physical aspects of it, because we're dealing with lives. We're not dealing with boxes or things. We're dealing with living beings that and those things can have impacts. Even if it's just moving them out for adoptions, they're having positive impacts. Just seeing sometimes where animals come from, or not knowing where they come from, or the circumstances that they're in, the things that our officers have to investigate, and the things that they'll see, the work that all of our staff do day in and day out, can be really taxing on folks, and it can really take a toll on people. And so we want to make sure we have some good support in there. Compassion fatigue is one of those areas where you'll hear about it through other areas like other job fields like nursing and law enforcement and things like that. But at the end of the day, a lot of our staff really are first responders sometimes, and they act in that capacity. And really realizing the nuances of animal welfare, we thought was really important. I think is really important to identify and acknowledge, and get some folks to support us with dedicated training for that. So that's the other thing that we're asking for. We're not going to be asking for it through animal services specifically, so it'll be wrapped up into a bigger request through our department. And like I said, we're excited to be able to provide that. And then really set the stage. The other piece that we're doing is with our donation funds is really re-examining how we use them and how we've leveraged them in the past, and look at ways that we can leverage them better going forward, so that we're really supporting not just the work that we're doing day to day at the shelter, but also supporting our community as a whole. We frequently see things or hear of reports like where a pet gets left at a veterinarian office and the owner doesn't respond because they can't afford the care, and they feel like that's their only option is to leave the animal there so it can be cared for, and then they lose that ownership. But we're really going to be looking at, and we don't know exactly what it'll look like at this point, but we do, the public does fund us really generously through donations, and we have ways to support. And so looking at creative ways to support more equitable access to things like veterinary care, so that folks don't end up in those types of situations, or when they do, that there's a little bit of a safety net to support them. We know that pet insurance exists, but it's nothing like people health insurance is, and a lot of things aren't even close to being covered through it. And the last thing that we want is just for somebody to lose their pet because they couldn't afford it, especially when a lot of times those bills can be thousands of dollars. And we know that a majority of people in our country can't afford an unexpected $300 or $400 bill. That's actually, we know that through research and studies that have been done. And so if we can step in and help somebody keep a pet, especially if we're going to end up providing that care anyway, what ways can we provide that care while still keeping that pet with that person? Or how can we leverage things proactively and not reactively to be able to do that? So that's the other piece we're going to be focusing on this budget year and this budget cycle, is trying to come up with some creative ways to do that and look at different ways that we can measure our effectiveness in the community with the work that we're doing with our performance measures, and what types of things can we do there? What kinds of data points are we looking at? And should we be shifting those and looking at different ones to measure success and how we're performing for folks? So we're excited to get into that work and dive into it and see what we can accomplish, and keep growing as an agency and developing and finding new ways and better ways to support the public. Any questions on any of that?
I don't have any questions. I just got excited about, but so my update since I was here last was that I've extended my time with Oregon Health Authority. So I'm on the COVID response unit, and we actually have access to Responder Life, which is a really incredible trauma-informed service. So I just, once you started mentioning different options for staff, that was where my mind went. Was, let's go to Responder Life. They're really nice.
Oh, nice. What's it called? Responder Life?
Responder Life, yeah. And so their main specialty is providing 24/7 peer support for first responders, but then they also have drop-in counseling sessions and team processing sessions. I think I feel like there could be a good alignment.
Nice. We'll check that out. Yeah. That sounds like a really interesting opportunity. Okay, well, it looks like we have time to end this a little bit early, just about 30 minutes earlier than what we had planned for, which was about what we had set up for the bylaws. So it means we kept on track. So if there's no other questions or comments or anything to discuss, I'm happy to go. I'll pause for a minute for those, but otherwise, if not, then we can adjourn. and give you back some of your evening again.
So I just wanted to clarify, are we planning on doing an ad hoc meeting or a doodle poll? Or I guess what's the next step?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tracy. I think what we'll do is we'll put out a doodle poll to try to determine if we can manage an ad hoc meeting in the next few weeks, I would say. And if not, then I'll work with Jessica to figure out a way to get creative and work things through email or a non-meeting piece if people don't have the availability. But we'll explore that doodle poll first to see if we do have availability or if there is a good time where we could pull together folks for 30 minutes so that we can do that.
Got it. Thank you.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, with that, yeah, I'll go ahead and let you all have your evening back. And yeah, look forward, keep an eye on your emails. We should have a doodle poll out with some proposed dates by the end of the week, I would think. All right.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Wade.
Have a good night.